Well, I want to ask a question right off the bat. If you have a teenager at home, applaud. Let me get kind of a feeling. Okay. All right. Thank you. I ask that question just about every show I do, and that's pretty much all it ever gets in response. It's just a woo. Thanks for bringing that up. Now listen to this. If you had a teenager and they grew up and they moved out of your home, applaud. Always a lot more life behind that one. I got some bad news for you. They're coming back. I don't know what the government's calling this generation, but I'm calling it the boomerang generation.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show. Our guest this week has been making people laugh for years, and his comedy specials have racked up nearly 1 billion views across social media platforms. And if that's not impressive enough, he's also a best-selling author. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show, comedian Jeff Allen. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Can't do anything without you guys, so I appreciate the invite.
Well, we appreciate, Jeff, that you're here. We've got a lot of ground to cover. And just like Rosie talked about, you're a best-selling author. Your book, Are We There Yet?, which is also the name of your current tour. We're going to get to both of those. And I love the fact that they're both about your journey. And that's what I'd like to do. But I'd like to just wind things back a little bit at an earlier part of your journey. Go back to Illinois, where I lived for 6 years in a little town called Grays Lake, south or north of Chicago.
I know right where that is.
Yeah, very nice little town. Lived there for 6 years. But I'm curious, Jeff, before you took the comedy stage, I believe the first time on a Thanksgiving night, you had a passion for something else, for baseball. And from what we understand, our local team here in Philadelphia may have even had you on a list. So how did you end up going from baseball to comedy?
Well, I drank myself out of baseball. So I got to college. I was drinking pretty heavy. I got recruited by a JC. I didn't want to go to college. I just wanted to I thought I could get a contract out of high school, but I couldn't. So I figured I'd go to a junior college for a couple of years. And when I hit there, I had no governor at all. I had no control at all. So I was going to workouts, drunk after lunch, and so anyway, I had a good season when the season hit, and I got back in fall ball. I was ineligible to play baseball the following year because of my grades the previous year. So I played fall ball, and then when spring came around, they said, you can't play, and I just went home, and that was it. I don't think I've touched a baseball twice since, but it was my passion. I know what that feels like. I envy people who have it because I've never really gotten it back. I love what I do. I love my life. But to know what that unadulterated joy is, to do something for the sake of just doing it, and then to have a skill at it, which was even better. But my father used to say, he said something to me when I was a teen that, if people tell you that you have a God-given talent, you tell them to shove it. There is no God, and this is all you. You do all the hard work, and blah blah blah. And that's when I realized, later on in life, I go, it wasn't hard work at all. There was no work at all. It was just joy for the sake of doing something. And to imagine to be able to do that for a living would have been amazing. And I love comedy, but it took me a lot of years to get to the point where I was sane enough in my personal life to not have it affect my professional life. So now I'm in a place that everything around me is just what we talked to the grandkids last night, I'm missing them. I'm going out of town and they're going to be in for the weekend. And Tammy's so excited. It's just the thought of seeing the kids. So, and time passes and things move on. So
What position did you play, Jeff?
No, it's interesting. I was an infielder up until junior year of high school, and I was a good hitter. And the shortstop was an all conference shortstop, senior. So I knew I wouldn't play shortstop. So they moved me to first base. And second or third game, I caught a ground ball. I ran over and I went to touch the base. I missed it like 4 times in a row just with my foot. I couldn't even tap the base. So the coach calls timeout and he says, I don't even know if we should have practiced that. I didn't think we needed to practice that. What do I throw a pillow on the ground and have you touch it with your foot? So he said, I was hitting like 400 something. He goes, can you do anything else? And I said, well, I used to catch in Little League. So anyway, it was like a duck to water putting me behind the plate. I got a big mouth. I got ADD. So you're in on every pitch. And I just absolutely loved catching. It was, and I was like again, I took charge and took control. And it was really, that's where I should have been. And I was good at it. So,
Wow. Well,
anyway, that's beyond that. None of my kids played, and my doesn't look like my grandson wants to play. My granddaughter looks like she might be interested in softball. We don't know, but I told Tammy, I said, I'm not going to live vicariously through my children for my missed opportunities. So they just didn't want to play baseball.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we also appreciate our first and longest running sponsor of the show, Tom and his team of insurance professionals at the Malin Agency. If world-class customer service and doing business with someone you can trust is important to you, give Tom and his team a call today for all your insurance needs.
Well, things happen for a reason, as we all know, and obviously there were lessons to learn and other paths to travel. When you became a comedian, well, a couple things come to mind. I'm curious what your family's reaction was to it, and also what were some of the lessons that you learned early on in your career?
Oh, the family didn't care. My parents kind of let me run the streets anyway, so there wasn't a whole lot of. My father told me freshman year in high school, you study hard, you could get good grades. If I have to, I'll sell my house to put you through college and get you educated. If you screw off, you're on your own. And 4 years later, he came to me and said, well, you screwed off, you're on your own. I mean, never checked homework, never checked anything. He left a 13-year-old to basically, live his life. So when I said I'm going to quit my job to go into comedy, my mother's response was, well, you're single. So this is the time to do things that are stupid. And I know she meant well. I know in her own way she meant well. But in comedy, I learned you better have a plan. It helps to have a plan. I think that's a theme that runs through my book is how unplanned my life was. I just did what was in front of me. I put my head to this day. I mean, when Dry Bar hit and my career took off in another direction and the trajectory changed, I told my manager, Tammy will determine how much I work. I said, I'm just going to put my head down and do what's in front of me. And managers and agents, they need to make money as well. So they'll book me every week they can, every show they can. So it was 2 years ago I did a movie. Yeah, it was 2 years ago this September, this month. I did a movie on location and still hasn't been released. So I don't know what, I must have been really bad or they're waiting for something. But anyway, a week into that, I was talking to Tammy on the phone back home, and I had been gone a while. Anyway, she's getting snippy with me, and I said to her, "What is going on with you?" And she said, "Don't hate me for missing you." And I said, "Well, gosh, that's a country lyric. We live in Nashville. Somebody can run with that." So anyway, I put her on a plane, flew her out to Minnesota where I was sitting for a few days. And I called my manager and said, I'm done for the year. Whatever bookings are on the calendar, that's it. And he said, I'm way ahead of you. I stopped booking you in August. I knew it was going to come to a head. So I have a plan and it helps to know where you want to go. And at least then you can start trying to find the gatekeepers. Today is a completely different animal because of the internet. You don't need LA or New York. You really don't. And I'm proof of that. I mean, I lived in New York and LA briefly, and I couldn't get any traction there. I was a mess, emotionally, but I got everything out of Nashville years later, and I'm in my 60s. So there's something to perseverance, and
Mm.
I got good at my craft. I just couldn't get any traction with media and audiences and things.
Jeff, I have to tell you one thing that really jumps out at me, both in the conversation we've had thus far and also in your book that I wanted to talk about, Are We There Yet? Is you are incredibly candid, incredibly open and honest and real. And folks, I have to tell you, this came in the mail for me yesterday. And I read the first two chapters last night. And I just, again, I have to commend you on your openness and candidness, because I don't know how many people there are that would be as open and honest as you are about your journey. And I'm only in the early stages of it right now. But
Right.
I'm wondering, Jeff, what was it that inspired you to write the book in the first place
Well,
and to do it the way you did?
Tammy's pushed me for a decade to write it. She was pointing out on the internet. She said, your faith uh, videos, the stuff you talk about that are honest and true and real,
Yeah.
outview your comedy videos almost 10 to 1. And I said, no, I'm not aware of that. I don't even pay attention to it. So she pushed me for a decade. If she wanted to have an argument with me, I'd come home from the golf course and I'd say, I shot 72 today. And she'd go, how many chapters have you written on your book in the last week? And then we would have an argument. I'd say, not a word, baby. I'm not a writer. I would tell her I'm not a writer. I said, I'm a storyteller, but I'm not a writer. And but I wrote a handful of stuff. So somebody saw me at an event from Salem Media, saw me at an event at the NRB, and said they went back and they were doing some research. They thought the comedy was really funny. They had never heard of me, and called my manager and said, we watched his testimony. Does he have any of that written down? We have a publishing arm. And he said, I'm sure he's got some stuff written. So I sent them like two chapters that I had written over the 10 years. And they wrote me back and they said, well, we love your story, but obviously you're going to need some help with the writing. And I ran upstairs and told Tammy, see, I told you I'm not a writer. So we really, what we did was get an editor. I spoke things auditory, and I'm much better verbally. And
Mm.
he would send things, and then I would edit those, and then I would send him things, and he would edit those. It was a great relationship I had with him. And he sat with us for about 3 hours and talked to Tammy, and a lot of that never got into the book. That may be a second book, is her side of everything.
Interesting.
But the first 6 chapters are the ages of 31 to 38, probably. I wrote it for millennials. Publishers always ask, who you're writing it for? I'm writing it for the 40-year-old that's sitting in his living room, the man, especially the man sitting in his living room at 10 o'clock at night. His family's asleep, and he's staring at the ceiling, and he's checked the boxes. Man, I got a beautiful wife I love. She loves me. I got kids. I got all of it. You check it all the way down the line. The job, the house, all of it. And you're just this hole inside you that isn't fulfilled, and you don't know. And I believe this, that the devil will beat you up with your past as long as he can keep you down and stuck in the past. Once you realize and accept and your past and heal from it, then he'll push you into the future, and you'll project 5, 10, 15 years. And that's what was killing me. I couldn't stay in the present, because the present, our marriage was in trouble. I mean, everything present was not good. The career wasn't doing well. The Tammy was. So anyway, uh, God wants you in the moment. He really does. But until you have a relationship with him, it's very difficult to do that. So I felt that telling those years, that story, those first half of the book, would resonate with certainly people who are looking for some sort of meaning and purpose and point to their life. And the second half of the book is basically the 20 some years as that we've lived through it. But I wrote it from a perspective. I think I was 65 when I wrote it. I'm 68 now. So when we sat down to start the process, so I had a different perspective at that age to look back at the younger man, and I think that's a common trick that coaches use with people. What would you say to your young,
Oh, yeah.
and my son just sent me something he got on TikTok: 7 questions you need to ask your father before he dies. And I was so moved that my son would even ask me. that I told my son, if I went to my father and said, I forgive you, he would have said, for what? So, yeah, it was a different generation. So I just felt that um, by every metric, Tammy and I should not be married together. We shouldn't be. Every metric the government keeps, from alcoholism and drug addiction to financial bankruptcy to infidelity to cancer to all of it. And for whatever reason, uh, the thought of living apart was more painful than living through the pain of whatever we were going through. And now we look back as a couple, and you know, we're older people now. We don't all of those things, that those standards that we held ourselves to, that we felt we were short of, that other couples, the perfect couples, are. We realize that the whole point of marriage is to grow together. When the Bible says you become one flesh, that's the point. You are now one. And then her problems, she's given me so much over the years that I would have never gotten if I was single. And I've given her things. I know I've given her things that she would never have, had we not met and not grown together, So I in the 2 chapters that you read, it's funny, I gave Tammy the final draft and I said, you need to be okay with my version of what we went through. She came out of the bedroom after 2 chapters crying and said, I can't read anymore. We were horrible people. So I said, well, finish the story. We turn out okay. Finish the book. So anyway, she finished it. We spent 40 hours, her and I went through 3 days, line by line by line, correcting my version of what we went through. So it is our story. I told her I'll put my name on it and I'll take the arrows and the slings from people. But I give God the glory, and I also give her the credit. She was a wonderful editor. She really was. She caught things. The first chapter, you read it, so it ends with talking about her affair. And she made me take the word affair out of the book. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, it wasn't an affair. And I go, well, what was it then? She says, well, let me tell you something. As a female, if a woman reads the word affair, she'll think there was something romantic about it. And there was nothing romantic about it. I was just at a point in my life where you looked at me with such horror and disdain and resentment every time you walked in a room. He looked at me nice. He respected me. He talked to me. And then I made some mistakes. One thing led to another. But I just started out just because he was nice to me. And I tell men's groups all over the country, I go, listen, men, if you're not going to pay attention to your wife, someone will. Period.
Yeah, and Jeff, the parallels between your 2 encounters at baggage claim, between the first time when you offered the world's greatest marriage proposal of all time,
yes,
to that second time that you're talking about, that really just resonated with me, along with the whole concept of just kind of those gaps that we all have, or those holes, as you said, and we're kind of looking for, is there any there? So I won't say any more about it, but again, I just really, really appreciate how you put it out there. And I can't wait to get in the rest of chapter 3 and beyond tonight.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah.
And Jeff, I will say that I'm glad to hear you're speaking to men's groups, and this is just such valuable advice and information, like for people that are married and have maybe been married a long time, but people who are starting out to hear that, it really is about the meat of it is the growing together and the connection and staying connected and kind of not letting the rest of the superficiality in to the relationship.
And stop reading statistics, and again, we're an older couple. I mean, and then just even in the bedroom, it's you read these statistics and then you think you're not measuring up. And she would come to me and she'd say, I do a joke in my show, which is true. We'd kiss in the hallway, and she'd look at me, I'd look at her, and I go, you wanna? And she'd go, I'd rather have a cinnamon roll. And I'd go, we have cinnamon rolls. All right. And that happens more than not, and it's funny. We watch movies now and we call it movie sex. It just doesn't happen in real life, where you just run through the door and you rip each other's clothes off. And, I remember, early in the marriage, coming home and giving her a big kiss. And she'd go, "What do you think? This is a port? You're some kind of sailor?" I've been raising two, ask me how my day went. How about we do that before we do anything else? So again, it's if you compare yourself to this fictional, whatever marriage is supposed to be, and every marriage is unique in that. And I'm working on now a routine about remembering, the baggage claim proposal. I met her at a comedy club. She came out of the back room wearing a white blouse, short leather skirt. And I say she had a perm. It was the 80s, and she had an unlit cigarette hanging from her mouth. And I'm looking at her. She's looking at me. She reaches in her hair, pulls out a lighter and sparks the cigarette, and then blows smoke in my direction and says, "What are you looking at?" I go, "I think I'm looking at my future." This is going to be a ride. And I later on in the show, I talk about her walking through the living room, and I said, I call them divine sparks. There's these moments that God will spark your heart if you just give him a chance. You're looking at her, she's walking around, she's doing what she does. She's wearing these sweatpants she's had for whatever years, and her hair's up in a bun. She's just, and there's all of a sudden it starts in my mind. Remember, look at her, really look at her and remember, and that white blouse, that short leather skirt, all of that remember those emotions. And for gosh, 40 years, God told the Jewish people, remember who brought you out of bondage. You keep forgetting the thing that bonded you, that brought us together, and then the joke is I go, and then I go, it's a lot of work, and I'll go back to my sports game here. I really think it is a message that needs to be heard. We bought the lie that that love is this euphoric feeling that you feel all the time, and when you stop feeling it, then there's no love there. And Scott Peck said it was a lie. It was an illusion put there by God to keep the species going. That all that euphoric stuff that leads up to, he said, love doesn't even begin till conflict enters a relationship. There's no such thing as a loving, conflict-free relationship. Doesn't exist.
Right.
And anybody over 17 should know that. But it's unfortunately so many adults they implode their entire lives because they meet somebody on the internet, makes them feel that euphoria. And, fortunately, we never bought into that, because, we had hard times. We really did. I mean, there were times women would come and approach me, and somewhere in the back of my mind was this, gosh, that's the last thing I need. So I don't need another woman. I really don't. I got to work this one out or not work it out. But that's the last, because I had a lot of friends that traveled and they got into these things, and their life was just constant turmoil, just constant. They'd have a girl in 4 different cities, and they're calling each other, and they're screaming and hollering, and I just would look at them and go, "Holy cow, man, go golf."
Jeff, I'm wondering, with you talked about your father did not believe in God, right? He said there's no God, you got to do it all yourself. But then you did find God, because we can hear how you're talking, and that's really been a powerful influence in your life. Do you find when you write your comedy that helps you now that you've had this big kind of 180-degree turn? Do you find more inspired to write, or is it more difficult to keep it clean?
Oh, well, it's interesting. I found it was interesting. I got clean because my son, 4th grade, was cussing at his school teacher, and we got called into school. And I told the teacher, I said, I'd love to look you in the eye with all seriousness and tell you I have no idea where that child of mine heard that kind of language, but he's been in and out of nightclubs his whole life, and anyway, driving home, Tammy said to me, that's a reflection on us, and it's not pretty. It really isn't when it comes out of your mouth of your 8-year-old or whatever, 9-year-old. So I cleaned up. I paid them a quarter. I told my children, I'm going to give you 25 cents for every bad word that comes out of my mouth. And basically, that's how I funded their college. But anyway, I wondered if I could take it on stage and clean it up. And as a storyteller, I realized it made me much better at what I do. When you have to get a thesaurus out and you don't skip right to the shock, and there is no shock anymore anyway. but I found it to be fun, and I loved. When I got to high school, I got called into the office because I had a 12th grade comprehension and a third grade vocabulary. And they said, we don't understand that. If you don't know what the words mean, how do you comprehend them? And I said, I can understand things in context. I mean, I'm a thinker. I can think my way through what a word means if I see it in a sentence. So anyway, when I got into comedy, I had a fourth grade vocabulary. I didn't really have much to draw on. And when in my 30s, when my son, all that, I bought a book on SAT words. I even wrote a joke with one of the words was acquiescence, and I wrote a joke about it. I said, I've come up with a line of men's cologne. It's called acquiescence. It's for real men who know how to comply. Made with the oil of a jellyfish. So anyway, I had fun with words. I have a blast with words, and it's interesting now when I watch politics on TV. And I told Tammy, I always pause the TV. I go, they're doodling with the words again. I love the word doodlers. That's what they do. They just doodle with the language. And we just sit there and go, oh, okay. It's 1,000 ways to say the same thing.
Right.
But yeah. I had a blast. I've had more fun putting things together now. I just did a new dry bar special that's coming out, and I wish I could reshoot it because I taped it 3 months ago. And in 3 months, that material is so much better than it was when I taped it. And it always happens that way. Every dry bar I've done 4 of them, and I look at it 3 months later when they release it and go, nuts. I got 8 more better lines than that,
Jeff, I have to tell you, it's funny to hear you say that, because one of the things that impresses me most about any of your specials that I've seen is the fact that there are no lulls from start to finish. Like I've seen many comedians where there's kind of some dry spells for a while and I'm waiting for the next good part. But you're from start to finish. There are literally no lulls. And I'm just wondering, from a writing side, how do you do that? Because it's literally amazes me.
Well, that came from the clubs and Panic. I worked a lot of really bad nightclubs, and if you stopped and paused, they start yelling. So I learned early on that if I keep talking, it usually keeps people at bay for the most part. And I spend as much time on segues as I do the material itself. I'll come up with a new story about Tammy and I go, gee, I wonder where that fits. And it may not get in the right slot until one night I just do it and I go, oh, that's where it belongs. It'll just pop into my head and I'll do it. So I love the process of stand-up comedy. I after 40 some years, you have to, otherwise you just stagnate and it's no fun for anybody. So people ask, what's your favorite joke? To me, it's the newest one. I wrote something about her throwing out my clothing, and I found a pair of my pants that she hated in the trash. And I brought them in the house and I said, how long have you been doing this? She goes, it's the first time. I go, you're a liar. Nobody gets caught doing anything the first time. I mean, that's why they're called serial killers, for gosh sakes. And I realized, I said, I've been missing clothes the entirety of our marriage. I really have. And she's gaslighting me for 40 years, Oh, you know how forgetful you are. You probably left them in a hotel room. So I had these tiger sweatpants that just went missing. And I said, my tiger pants. She goes, you're darn right I threw them out. I'm not even ashamed of it. She goes, Jeff, I got sick and tired of looking. You never took them off. You never, blah, blah, blah. And then I would, she goes, we'd go to the grocery store. You'd wear them. I had to walk 8 feet behind you. I didn't want anybody to know I was with you. Oh my God, you looked homeless, all of that. And then my MC Hammer pants. I go, my Hammer, they were gone like in 5 days. She goes, they were burned. I go, you burned them? She says, well, I just put them under the leaves. You did the rest. So anyway, I do a poll. I've been doing a poll for 3 months in the audience. I go, men, by applause, how many of you have ever thrown out a stitch of your wife's clothing? Not one man in 3 months have ever applauded. But when I say women, they with glee, they applaud. They go, you're darn right I did. So I think we're going to do a promotion on the Facebook. I just want to see pictures of clothing that women have thrown out of their husbands. I want to start posting that the shirt of the month club.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Jeff, what do you have coming up for the rest of this year?
Oh, I got a lot. I would say just go to jeffallencomedy.com. And if you sign up for any of the social media pages, we post calendars, certainly 6 weeks out. And got a big show in Nashville coming up October 11th. I'm working with Stephen Bargatze. If you're familiar with Nate Bargatze, that's his dad. And we just hit it off. I think we're gonna. It's my goal. I haven't talked to him about it yet, so I would love to work with him next year for a bunch of dates. But he's a world-class magician, as funny as his son. You see where his son gets his sense of humor from, and it's going to be a wonderful night. Fisher Center, October 11th, Friday night. I tell people, if you've ever wanted to come to Nashville, come Friday, October 11th. Stay Saturday, go to Broadway, hit all the nightclubs, hit all the rooftop bars. And then Sunday, Nashville is loaded with churches, so you can repent on your way to the airport.
That's a great idea, Jeff. And
great
also,
weekend.
Yeah, and I also want to throw out there for our viewers, especially those in our area of Philadelphia and suburban Philadelphia, I did see on your website, you've got a couple of shows coming up in the Philadelphia area in January.
Yes.
Are We There Yet tour will continue into 2025. And we're going to be at one of those shows. Not sure which one.
I hope so. Please come up and say hello. Sometimes people say they're going to, and they come, and then they never say hello.
Right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show. Guys. All the best with the book. I can't wait to read it, and your continued touring and everything. And yeah, go buy Are We There Yet, folks? Check it.
Amazon. It'll be there in a day. He sells it for less than I pay for it. That's why everybody hates Jeff Bezos.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in. Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See you next week.
Took me 2 years of marriage to figure out she'll never tell me to do anything around our home. If she wants me to do something, she'll ask me a question from the question. I got to stand there and figure out what it is she wants me to do. Simple example, say I leave a pair of my underwear in the middle of the bedroom floor. It's a hypothetical. We all know no man could possibly be that insensitive. It's just to leave his nasty underwear laying on the floor. But let's just say it happened. It frosts my wife. That's her word when she's angry with me. That just frosts me. And if I'm not frosting her, I'm driving her up a wall. That's another one. Kids would come in. Where's mom? She's up the wall with frostbite. That's all I know. And you won't believe what put her there, boy. It was that pair of underwear in the middle of the bedroom floor. You are looking at the most powerful piece of cotton on planet Earth. All right, so my underwear's in the middle of the room. Now, she's frosted, she's upset. Now, would she come to me and say to me, pick those up? That's 3 words. Pick those up. Will you pick those up? 3 words! No, because that would be simple, direct, and right to the point. And at that moment, I would know exactly what my wife wants from me. We would be communicating at the highest human level, the way God the Creator intended. The only species on the planet that could use language to communicate. Would she say it? No, because again, simple, direct, right to the point. She looks at me, she looks at my underwear, and then asks, "Are those yours?" I sure hope they are, otherwise I got a few questions of my
own. This week's episode has been brought to you by Doherty & Company Insurance Services for all your business and personal insurance needs. Our friends at Tennis Addiction in Exton, PA. And the Malin Agency, where exceeding expectations is how they do business.